Civilization did not emerge from a grand design or a council of wise elders, but through a series of small, accidental decisions. In the fertile floodplains of southern Iraq, humanity found a landscape that would forever alter the trajectory of our species' long history. For thousands of years, our ancestors lived as nomadic wanderers, following the seasonal rhythms of nature across vast and unforgiving open landscapes. They moved constantly to survive, never building anything permanent, because you do not construct lasting structures when you plan to leave. However, the unpredictable yet nutrient-rich flooding of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers changed the equation, offering a rare opportunity for growth. These rivers were not gentle, often destroying harvests in an afternoon, yet they left behind a thick layer of incredibly fertile silt. This dark, rich soil was renewed every single year, providing a level of agricultural productivity that was almost unfair in its abundance. These floodplains provided a bounty of resources that allowed for massive agricultural surpluses, incentivizing nomadic groups to finally settle down permanently. That surplus was the true founding decision of civilization. Someone looked at a field of grain and decided the harvest was worth staying. This shift led to the rise of Uruk, the world's first true city, where the density of human interaction sparked a new era. By 3200 BCE, Uruk was the largest city on Earth, a sprawling hub of mud brick buildings, bustling markets, and massive temples. Within these walls, specialization flourished as never before, allowing individuals to move beyond mere survival and into the realms of skilled craftsmanship. People became potters, brewers, and weavers, creating a complex society that required a sophisticated way to manage its growing wealth of resources. Even beer became central to this new life, with workers paid in rations and a dedicated goddess overseeing the brewing process. As population surged, human memory simply failed to track the vast amounts of barley, livestock, and goods being exchanged throughout the city. This administrative headache, born from the success of their own abundance, sparked the most important invention in the history of human civilization. It began with simple clay tokens, each one representing a quantity of a specific good, acting as the world's first physical spreadsheet. A sphere meant grain. A cylinder meant oil. It was a simple, tactile way to keep track of what was coming and going. Then, someone made a leap that was almost incomprehensibly elegant. Instead of keeping the tokens, they pressed them into flat clay. By keeping the impression, the mark of the thing, rather than the thing itself, they moved from physical objects to abstract representation. From marks of things came pictures of ideas, and from pictures came symbols, eventually evolving into the wedge-shaped script we call cuneiform. These marks transformed from mere receipts for trade into the foundation for law, literature, and the permanent preservation of human thought itself. By capturing language on clay, the people of Uruk ensured that their ideas could transcend time, space, and the frailty of memory. This accidental innovation did not just organize a city. It created a framework for knowledge that would eventually span the entire globe. The temple dominated every city, with the ziggurat rising at the center as a massive stepped tower, the house of the god. The temple controlled the granaries, organized labor, and kept the accounts, making the world's first bureaucrats into priests. For nearly 2,000 years, Sumerian city-states traded with each other, while occasionally bleeding each other dry in wars over water rights. Until around 2350 BCE, a man named Sargon looked at a fractured, exhausted Sumer and saw an opportunity to unify the region. The story of his birth is one of the oldest hero myths we have, involving a basket on the river and a humble beginning. But what strikes me about Sargon is not the legend, it is the strategy. For he did not destroy what he found. He absorbed the existing systems, keeping the temples running and the scribes writing, because he understood that systems are worth more than people. Sargon built the world's first multinational empire, stretching from the Persian Gulf to Syria, with trade networks reaching the distant Indus Valley. For the first time in history, one name was recognized across thousands of miles, marking the true beginning of imperial administration. Yet his successors could not keep it together, and about 180 years later, the Akkadian Empire collapsed, not with a battle, but by fading. Empire after empire followed, from Babylon to Assyria and Persia, each one certain it would be the last, yet none of them were. Through all of it, something persisted that none of the conquerors ever destroyed, as the writing and the mathematics survived the fall. Our 60-minute hour comes directly from Sumerian Base 60 Mathematics, as does our 360-degree circle and the way we divide our time. We never bothered to replace these systems because they work, and they have become the invisible scaffolding of our modern daily lives. The Sumerians lost their empire, their language stopped being spoken, and their cities were swallowed by the shifting desert sands. But every civilization that came after inherited something from them, specifically the idea that you can write something down to make it permanent. They established that laws should be public, and that cities are the primary way to organize human beings at a massive scale. These were not obvious ideas at the time, but the Sumerians thought of them first, setting the stage for everything that followed. We are still running their experiment today, and we have not improved on some of their foundational concepts as much as we think. The legacy of Uruk is not just in the ruins, but in the very way we think about trade, law, and our own history. Every time we look at a clock or read a contract, we are participating in a tradition that started in that hot, flood-prone valley. It is a testament to the power of human ingenuity that a simple need to count barley could lead to the birth of literature. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the world's first written story, survived for 4,000 years because someone decided to press it into clay. That act of preservation is the bridge between their world and ours, connecting their administrative needs to our modern intellectual life. We see the echoes of their bureaucracy in our own government, and the echoes of their trade in our globalized economy. It is a humbling realization that the foundations of our world were laid by people who were simply trying to manage their harvest. They were not trying to build a legacy, yet they created the tools that allowed humanity to record its own existence. Without that grain problem, the history of the world would look entirely different, lacking the structure that writing provides to society. The transition from nomadic life to urban centers was the most significant pivot in our species, development, and it happened by accident. As we look back at Mesopotamia, we see the blueprint for what it means to live together, trade together, and grow together. The ziggurats may be eroded and the rivers may have shifted, but the ideas they fostered remain the bedrock of our civilization. We are the inheritors of their administrative genius, carrying forward the same base 60 math and the same impulse to write things down. The story of Mesopotamia is the story of us, a narrative of growth, complexity, and the enduring power of the written word. As we move forward into the next chapter, we will see how these ideas evolved in the great city of Babylon. If you want to see where this story goes next, the next video is right there, waiting to explore what Babylon has to answer for. Join us as we continue to trace the origins of the world you live in, one clay tablet and one city at a time. As cities like Uruk expanded, they evolved into complex centers of bureaucracy, where the temple became the beating heart of society. The ziggurat rose at the center, a massive stepped tower serving as the house of the god and the hub of administration. The temple controlled the granaries, organized the labor of thousands, and meticulously kept the accounts of every harvest and trade. The world's first bureaucrats were priests, managing the flow of resources that sustained the growing population within the city walls. For nearly 2,000 years, these Sumerian city-states traded with one another, yet frequently bled each other dry in territorial wars. This fractured landscape of competing powers created a volatile environment, where borders and water rights were constant sources of conflict. Then, around 2350 BCE, a man named Sargon looked at this exhausted, divided Sumer and saw a singular historic opportunity. The story of Sargon's birth is one of our oldest hero myths, involving a basket on the river and a humble water drawer. Whether or not the legend is true, the historical reality of Sargon's rise is far more fascinating than the myth itself. What strikes me most about Sargon is not his origin story, but the sheer brilliance of his political and military strategy. He did not seek to destroy the civilization he conquered. Instead, he chose to absorb it into a much larger vision. The temples continued to run, the scribes kept writing their tablets, and the existing economic systems remained largely intact under him. He installed Akkadian governors in Sumerian cities, yet he was careful to preserve the administrative machinery that made the region function. Sargon understood a fundamental truth that most conquerors throughout history have failed to grasp. Systems are more valuable than people. By keeping the infrastructure of trade and governance alive, he built the world's first truly multinational and stable empire. His domain stretched from the Persian Gulf all the way to northern Syria, creating a vast, interconnected web of human activity. Trade networks expanded to reach as far as the Indus Valley, bringing exotic goods and new ideas into the heart of Mesopotamia. For the first time in human history, A single name was recognized and feared across thousands of miles of diverse territory. Yet, the challenge for his successors was to keep this massive, fragile structure together after Sargon had long passed away. They struggled to maintain the unity he had forged, and about 180 years later, the Akkadian Empire began to fracture. It did not collapse in one final dramatic battle, rather, it simply stopped holding together under the weight of its own size. Following the fall of Akkad, empire after empire rose to take its place, including the mighty civilizations of Babylon and Assyria. Each of these successive powers was certain that they would be the last, yet none of them could escape the cycle of history. Through all the shifting borders and crumbling walls, something persisted that none of the conquerors could ever truly destroy. The writing survived, carrying the weight of knowledge from one generation to the next, regardless of who sat on the throne. The mathematics survived as well, providing the tools necessary for trade, construction, and the observation of the celestial heavens above. Our modern 60-minute hour is a direct inheritance from the base 60 mathematics developed by the ancient Sumerian scholars. Even the way we divide a circle into 360 degrees finds its origin in their early geometric calculations. The way we measure time, seconds, minutes, and hours, is fundamentally Sumerian, a legacy we have never bothered to replace. We have kept this system for thousands of years simply because it works, proving the enduring utility of their original logic. The Sumerians eventually lost their empire, their spoken language faded into silence, and their cities were swallowed by the shifting sands. Yet, every civilization that followed, from Babylon and Persia to Greece and Rome, inherited the building blocks of their unique culture. They gave us the profound idea that you can write something down and have it mean something permanent for the future. They established the standard that laws should be public, visible, and applicable to all, rather than hidden in the minds of rulers. They proved that cities are the most effective way to organize human beings at scale, allowing for specialization and rapid innovation. These were not obvious or inevitable ideas. Someone had to have the imagination to think of them for the very first time. The Sumerians were those pioneers, setting the precedent for how we define civilization, governance, and the recording of human history. We are still running their grand experiment today, testing the limits of the structures they first designed in the Fertile Valley. In many ways, we haven't improved on their fundamental concepts as much as we like to think in our modern age. The echoes of Uruk and the Akkadian Empire are still present in our daily lives, from the clocks we watch to the laws we follow. It is a humbling realization that the foundations of our world were laid by people who lived thousands of years ago. They faced the same problems of resource management, trade, and social order that we continue to grapple with in the present. Their solutions were not perfect, but they were durable enough to survive the rise and fall of countless empires that followed. As we look back at these ruins, we are not just looking at history. We are looking at the mirror of our own society. The administrative headache of counting grain led to the birth of writing, which in turn led to the birth of human history. Every book ever written, every legal contract signed, and every historical record kept can trace its lineage back to those clay tablets. The transition from physical tokens to abstract symbols was the cognitive leap that allowed humanity to transcend the limits of memory. This shift enabled the accumulation of knowledge, allowing us to build upon the discoveries of those who came before us. It is the reason we have literature, science, and the ability to communicate across vast distances and through the passage of time. The Sumerians gave us the tools to think in new ways, and we have been using those tools ever since to shape reality. Their legacy is not just in the ruins of their cities, but in the very architecture of our modern, interconnected global culture. We owe much of our current understanding of the world to the scribes, priests, and kings who first dared to organize the chaos. They turned a flood-prone valley into the cradle of civilization, proving that human ingenuity can overcome even the harshest conditions. Their story is a testament to the power of small decisions, like keeping track of barley to change the course of history. As we conclude this chapter, we carry with us the understanding that our world is built on layers of ancient innovation. The experiment continues, and we are the latest participants in a process that began when the first city was built. We are the heirs to the Sumerian legacy, tasked with maintaining the systems that keep our modern society functioning and stable. The journey from the banks of the Euphrates to the present day is a long one, filled with triumphs and inevitable collapses. If you want to see where this story goes next, the next video is right there, waiting to explore the rise of Babylon. Babylon, as it turns out, has a lot to answer for, and its story is just as compelling as the one we have just finished.